Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the hazing prevention training. I appreciate every one of you that has taken the time to attend the supplemental training. With all of the recent changes in the law regarding hazing, it's imperative that you understand how participating in hazing can affect you from a disciplinary standpoint. In the Office of Student Services, we investigate alleged violations of hazing from a disciplinary standpoint, specifically from the perspective of the Code of Student Conduct. Many students are unaware that participating in hazing can result in Code of Student Conduct violations that result not only from a disciplinary standpoint, but from a legal standpoint. And for these reasons, we have invited Lieutenant Jeremy Kent to speak to you from a legal standpoint today. I want to thank UPD and Lieutenant Jeremy Kent for agreeing to talk to each of you, as well as Student Life and Leadership. I want to thank Megan Morris and Emily Essex for setting up this supplemental training. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Pamela Jackson. I'm the Dean of Students, and I'm one of the people that's responsible for investigating alleged cases of hazing. So we'll go ahead and begin, and I'll let Emily and Megan talk right now.
Hey guys, I'm Emily Essex, and I am the Director of Student Life and Leadership. Megan.
And I am Megan Morris. I'm Assistant Director of Student Life and Leadership, as well as your RSO Coordinator. I'm going to share my screen for just a second to talk to you guys about our mandatory hazing module. This will be the same module that we used last year. It'll be Live Tech. If I can go to the next slide. It will be exactly the same thing that you did last year online. I'm going to show you in a second exactly how to get there, but this training will be due from all of your members and advisors as well by November 24th. That's the day before we leave to go on Thanksgiving holiday. That gives you more than enough time to make sure that every single one of your members as well as advisors has taken the training. This is for all RSOs that have any student members at all. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm going to show you exactly where. I think I'm going to have to change my screen share. But hold on one second. In 1 second, guys. Okay, apparently I am technologically challenged today, but you're going to go straight to Student Life's website. ULM.edu/studentlife. I don't know why I can't get out of this screen, but I'm being real dumb right now. Sorry, guys. ULM.edu.
On our Student Life page, Megan.
Yeah, but am I? Or is that what you see? Oh, hold on.
It's the PowerPoint.
That's what I was trying to get out of to get to our website. Did it? Now you see the website?
Yes.
Perfect. That's what I was trying to do. Right here on our Student Life website, when you go to Student Life and this left-hand module menu over here, you'll see hazing policy and information right under student organizations. When you click that, it will take you to this link right here, this ulm.prevent.zone. That is your training. You will log in using your ULM credentials, and you will take Hazing Prevention 101 course, College Edition. Every single one of your members, as well as advisors, must take this. Now, the difference this year is that I am not requiring you to turn in a hazing report as a president of an organization. Last year, that just ended up being an unnecessary report for you guys to have to do. I will be able to run a report on this website, and I will compare it to your roster that is in Wingspan. So you need to make sure that your membership roster in Wingspan is up to date, because if they are listed as an active member in Wingspan, that's what's going to determine to me if I need to check them off the list through a live tech. So if you have any questions about that, it is open now. You can begin as soon as you wish to do that. Push it out. It is your responsibility to make sure that your members have taken this. I will send a reminder a little bit closer to the deadline to our presidents and advisors, but it's your job to make sure that every single one of your members has taken it. Otherwise, your organization as a whole will be held responsible for not meeting the requirement. So let me know if you guys have any trouble or have any questions about it when you start getting in there, but it will look exactly like it did last year. And the other thing I need you to know before I turn it over to Lieutenant Kent is that at the end, as he's wrapping it up, I'm going to put a link in the chat, and that link will be where you'll mark your attendance. So I'll do that towards the end to ensure that everyone has stayed the duration of his presentation. You'll click that link and mark your attendance in Wingspan for this event. So be looking for that at in the chat later. And Jeremy, I'm handing it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. So for those that are here and going, looks like we've got several of them on. I was asked to present for about 45 minutes, but I'm going to be honest with you, from a Zoom perspective, 30 minutes is about the max of what I'm going to be able to give. So hopefully we'll have this thing wrapped up here in about a half hour, if that's okay with everybody else. So a quick bio for those that don't know me. My name is Jeremy Kent. I'm the lieutenant at the ULM Police Department. And I became involved with helping train and coordinate some of the hazing incidents several years ago with Greek Life here, working hand in hand with our student life and our Dean of Students, to kind of help bridge that gap between what law enforcement investigates, what we expect, what we look for out of a hazing, compared to what student life and leadership or what our Dean of Students may be looking for when it comes to things like criminal investigation versus a policy violation. So my expertise and what I'm going to share with you today is going to be more associated with the criminal violation aspect of it. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen as well to see if I can get, there we go. So we'll get a little PowerPoint presentation here that kind of follows along with what I'm going to discuss today. So the first thing that I want to cover, and I'll start this and end with this, communication and communicative efforts are probably the top priority for everything that we need when it comes to an investigation. And the only way you can communicate is we'll give you pathways to communicate. So I'll start with the ULM Safe app. It's a free app. It's available in Google Play Store and iTunes to be downloaded. Within this app, you can access anonymous tip software to where you can send in anonymous tips to our dispatcher. You can include photos and videos if needed. There are several campus resources. There are friend watch programs. There are emergency action buttons that you can activate within it. It's a great app. It's free of cost, and it really, really will help allow you quick and easy access into safety and security on campus as needed. Another great aspect of this app is if you're off campus or at another university, you can access their university safety and security resources through their police departments if they utilize this app. Currently, I know Louisiana Tech and LSU are both utilizing the app, and several other universities around our area are currently in discussions, which would be really great. So with that, I'm here to discuss criminal hazing, as I've said, and there are multiple aspects to this that fall within student code of conduct and policy violations, and I encourage each of you to be very familiar with your student handbook and what's in there as far as student code of conduct. Just because I tell you something is legal or illegal from a criminal standpoint does not incriminate or absolve you from the student life or the policy violation standpoint. Those two do work hand in hand, but they are completely different entities. So you should be aware of the student code of conduct as it relates to hazing as well. So the criminal aspect of it is found in the revised statutes of Louisiana law 1440.8, and it simply says it shall be unlawful for any person to commit an act of hazing. Any person who commits an act of hazing shall be either fined up to $1,000, imprisoned for up to 6 months, or both. So what's significant about this is the shall be. In some cases in Louisiana law, you might read a should be, which means it's a recommendation that a judge find you in offense of one of these hazing investigations, that you could be possibly fined or possibly imprisoned. And recently they changed this to say shall be, meaning it's mandatory. So if you are arrested for hazing and a trial ensues and you're found guilty during the trial, there's no way to get around this basic line of punishment. This is mandatory for all courts in the state of Louisiana, that there be at least a $1,000 fine or imprisoned up to 6 months, or both, depending on the severity of the crime. So the elements of criminal hazing, any of the following acts associated with pledging, being initiated into, affiliating with, participating in, holding office in, or maintaining membership in any organization, being physical brutality, physical activity, forced consumptions of foods and liquid activity, and they've changed forced to also include coerced. So if you are forced or coerced into massive consumptions of liquids or foods, and then also any activity involving the commission of a crime. So all of these will be the elements of what, from the investigative standpoint, if I'm trying to determine if a criminal hazing has occurred, these would be the things that I would look for. A point of note for you guys is that the terminology brutality is a very vague term and essentially means anything to the form of battery that could potentially lead to an injury. So it doesn't have to be exorbitant. It just has to meet those minimum qualifications for an element of criminal hazing. So the organization, I'm not going to go through what all of this means, but the important aspects of it to note for the university experience is basically any group that you're a part of can be considered an organization if it's coordinated, if it's organized, if it reports through student life and leadership, if it's a group such as an athletic group or a band group, if there's any form of regulations or periods of tryouts to get involved. So essentially they have gone and defined from fraternities, sororities, associations, corporations, order societies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can read it, but make special note for spirit groups, athletic teams, band groups. All of these fall into the same organization that can be held liable for criminal hazing. Pledging would be the recruitment between the entering and the rushing side, means any activity related to becoming the member of the organization. And then another definition that we'll cover will be the enhancements to criminal hazing. So death, injury, and alcohol enhancements. If the hazing results in the serious bodily injury or death of the victim, or the hazing involves forced or coerced alcohol consumption that results in the victim having a blood alcohol concentration of at least 0.3% by weight based on grams of alcohol per 100 cubic centimeters of blood, any person who commits an act of hazing shall be fined up to $10,000 and imprisoned with or without hard labor for up to 5 years. Again, it's important that we note the shall be. It's no longer a recommendation. This is mandatory. Serious bodily injury in the state of Louisiana usually involves anything from being knocked unconscious to permanent disfigurement or anything that would leave scarring or major surgery to repair. And then the 0.3% alcohol per body weight. The general rule of thumb for anybody above the age of 21 is being under the level of 0.08 to be legal for operating a vehicle on a public roadway. So 0.3 is the level of which we would take anybody to a hospital and have their stomach pumped. It's basically a level of intoxication that's results in loss of body control, being able to stand, so forth and so on. So once you reach this severe intoxication, you automatically see an increase in the criminal hazing from the misdemeanor to the $10,000 and imprisoned with or without hard labor up to 5 years. That's at the individual level. The organization level is always going to be harder. So if you are a organized member, if you're president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, or any other representative as an officer of the organization, directors, trustees, whether it be national or parent, if you knew of this, if you knew that this happened or was going to happen, and you failed to report to law enforcement that one or more of the organization's members were hazing, the organization itself becomes liable for payment of a fine up to $10,000 from the organization, forfeiture of any public funds received by the organization, and forfeiture of all rights and privileges of being the organization. So what we're finding as that relates to the state of Louisiana is the national organization may not recognize Louisiana state law, and the national organization may continue to exist. However, Louisiana may not recognize the organization anymore or allow them to exist anywhere in the state. So that depends on what level of the hazing it gets, and we'll discuss some of those in just a moment. So the Max Gruber Act is the main act. This was a couple of years ago, House Bill 78. This is what really catapulted hazing onto mainstream enforcement area for our state. Max Gruber basically resulted in a pretty extreme, pretty severe hazing incident where he died of an extreme blood alcohol content. And it resulted in the several members of the organization being arrested for certain murder charges because there were no hazing charges at the time. So we'll go over this one real quick. Prior to this, what you found was a very light end recommendation for punishment. I want to say it was a potential of $100 fine. It was very weak. It really didn't carry much of anything. And then after the Max Gruber Act, they put in all these recommendations for what we just went over, so that you saw the increases in the shall-tos for misdemeanor punishment versus felony punishment. You saw the breakdown into the elements that led to the stricter fines. And it amended the bill to include any organization in an educational institution, and then specified what defines that hazing. So this was Max Gruber. He was 18 years old, died on September the 4th, 2017. Phi Delta Theta from LSU was the organization. And I don't remember the exact date, but the organization got 33 years of suspension. His blood alcohol content at the time of his death was 0.495. So if 0.3 would be the level that we would take anybody to the hospital for alcohol poisoning, at his time of death, which would have been several hours after his consumption, his alcohol content was 0.495. Most medical institutions would recognize a 0.5 as being legally dead. So 2033 was their ban and punishment. So they've still got almost 13 years before they're allowed to apply to come back to the university. 3 of the fraternity members were arrested for misdemeanor hazing, and then 1 arrested for negligent homicide. At the time, the school was being sued for $25 million when I put this PowerPoint together, but I believe that they have settled for well over that number. Another one around the same time that was in headlines, just not in our region, was Timothy Piazza out of Readington Township, New Jersey. He was hazed with a forced consumption of vodka. It was a split level home that went into a basement. As he was consuming the vodka, he fell down the stairs. They kind of just sort of left him there. They thought he was just sleeping it off. Blood alcohol content was somewhere between a 0.28 and a 0.38 at time of death is what they estimated. Over 20 of the fraternity members were arrested, several of them for manslaughter and homicide. As it settled out, only 4 of them ended up convicted. But the entire campuses nationwide had to be alcohol-free until this semester, so 3 years, and they're just now being allowed to apply back in, but they had to do a serious amount of training. So I've got this one in just to show that what you do here can have a major effect on the national chapter and sanctions that end up hitting every university across our nation. So lastly, and I told you that I would start with this and end with this, would be our reporting and contact information. So there are several ways that you can report. If you witness hazing, if you know of hazing, if another organization is hazing, or if you've been hazed or a member of your organization is hazing, our UL system keeps an open hazing tip software available at ulsystem.edu/hazing. You can link in there, fill out a form anytime, 24/7, and that form gets routed from the UL system through the appropriate resources, depending on which university it is. You can always report to the ULM Police Department or utilizing that ULM Safe app that I advertised at the beginning. And I will say that we keep the police department is open 24/7 as well, so there's somebody to answer the dispatch line 5350 around the clock. Our Maxient hazing reporting is hosted through ULM, and you can find that on the below link. Our silent witness reporting link is also up there for you, and our Better Living Res Life reporting link. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'll ask Megan to answer this in a minute, but I believe our Maxient and our silent witness are both accessible through the Student Life and Leadership page. Is that correct, guys? They're nodding yes, so I'm going to go with yes on that. So that pretty much wraps up what I have to present to you guys, and I wanted to leave a few minutes around if anybody had any questions. So to avoid this being just full chaotic, I'm going to stop sharing my screen first and try to get a full view. So if anybody wants to be unmuted, maybe, or if you want to respond in chat to a question, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Also, just to let you guys know, we are recording this, so it will be up on our website for any of your members that weren't able to hear, especially what Jeremy has mentioned, and then, of course, what Megan, as far as getting accessing the app or the website. So we'll have this on our Student Life page as well for you to get to.
And like he said, all of those links that he just shared with you, ways to submit, report, as well as find information on ULM's hazing policy and the student code of conduct, they're all on our Student Life webpage under that hazing policy and information, the same menu button on the left-hand side that took you straight to the module, the Alive Tech, where you'll complete the mandatory training. There are links there and resources for you to use if you're doing any in-house hazing prevention training or lessons or meeting topics. please look at that website, look at those pages. We've got a lot of resources for you to use. This video will be up, like she said. You're more than welcome to use this and share it with your chapter members. And if you ever have any questions, we are always here to answer and help as much as we can. The link is in the chat for you guys to click on and mark your attendance in Wingspan. My Greeks that are being mandated to be here by Chris, that's super important. It should be marking your attendance as soon as you click the link. But if you're not sure that it's marking your attendance, it should say at the very bottom of the screen as soon as you log into Wingspan, attendance recorded. But you can RSVP and I'll know that that means that you were here if you're questioning if it's working.